A miracle reawakens the awareness that the spirit and not the body is the altar of truth. This is the recognition that leads to the healing power of the miracle. Your abilities will be very useful when they come under involuntary control, rather than involuntary lack of control. Following the right involuntary guide will enable you to recognize both physical and spiritual dangers and will provide the means for avoiding each of them in a most efficient way. This is a case in which the end does justify the means. It is only when means and ends are not of the same order of reality that there is fear. This fear arises out of the inescapable awareness, which you were given by God for all time, that only the appropriate means can work for the different kinds of ends you must accomplish before you can achieve your one end. This awareness is a built-in check which was necessary if you were to use the temporary expedient of time usefully. While there is time, communion and bread are both necessary. Without either, you feel deprived, and you cannot escape this by confusing the two. All depression and all fear and embarrassment ultimately stem from this confusion. Miracles are natural expressions of total forgiveness. Through miracles, you affirm your acceptance of God's forgiveness by extending it to others. The second step is inherent in the first, because light cannot tolerate darkness. Light, by definition, dispels darkness automatically. Miracles are associated with fear only because of their fallacy that darkness can hide. People believe that what they cannot see does not exist, and the physical eye cannot see in the dark. This is a very primitive solution and has led to a denial of the spiritual eye, which always depends on light. However, remember the biblical statement, "The eye of the Lord are in every place, beholding the evil and the good." There are two stages, one lower and one higher, which are involved in the escape from darkness. The first is the recognition that darkness cannot hide. This usually does entail fear. The second is that there is nothing you want to hide, even if you could. This brings escape from fear. As soon as you have completely entered the second phase, you will be not only willing to enter into communion, but you will also understand peace and joy. Your commitment is not yet total. That is why you still have more to learn than to teach. When your equilibrium stabilizes, you can teach as much as you learn. This will give you the proper sense of balance. Meanwhile, remember that no effort is wasted. Unless you remember this, you cannot avail yourself of my efforts, which are limitless. The biblical teaching that if you are ashamed of me before man, I will be ashamed of you before God, is interpreted as a threat only as long as you remain at the first stage. What it really means is that if you are ashamed of me or embarrassed by love, you will project and therefore make it impossible for me to reach you. Make every effort you can not to do this. I will help you as much as you will let me. Miracles make time and tide wait for all men. They can heal the sick and raise the dead because you yourself made death and taxes and can abolish both. Note that tax also means strain. You are a miracle. God creates only that which or one who is of surpassing excellence or merit. A dictionary definition of miracles. You are capable of this kind of creation too, being in the image and likeness of your own Creator. Anything else is only your own nightmare and does not exist. Only the creations of light are real. You are wholly lovely, a perfect shaft of pure light. Before your loveliness, the stars stand transfixed and bow to the power of your will. What do children know of their creation except what their Creator tells them? You were created above the angels, because your role involves creation as well as protection. You, who are in the image of the Father, need bow only to Him, before whom I kneel with you. Miracles are part of an interlocking chain of forgiveness, which, when completed, is the atonement. This process works all the time and in all dimensions of time. I am in charge of the process of atonement, which I undertook to begin. My atonement was for the cancelling out of all sins which you could not otherwise correct. That is what the biblical statement, "underneath are the everlasting arms," means. However, it is clear that when you can atone by miracles, both giver and receiver are atoning. It is better to atone this way, because of the mutual benefits involved. Inasmuch as you do it unto the least of these my brethren, really ends with, you do it unto yourself and me. The reason why you come before me is because I do not need miracles for my own atonement, but I stand at the end in case you fail temporarily. The word sin should really be absence of love. Sin is a man-made word with threat connotations he made up himself. No real threat is involved anywhere. Just because nature abhors a vacuum, which is true enough, it does not follow that a vacuum is filled with hellfire. Nothing is gained by frightening yourself, and it's very destructive. Miracles need freedom from fear. Part of their atonement value involves that very freedom. The word atone really means undo. If you will look up atonement, you will find that an obsolete meaning is to set at one or reconcile, to agree. Obviously, before reconciliation or agreement is possible, what is out of accord must be undone. It may seem as if darkness must be dispelled before light can come in, but the truth is that darkness is dispelled by light. The next part of the course will place increasing emphasis on atonement, since changing learning patterns requires undoing the old ones. The real meaning of retroactive inhibition is simply that when two kinds of learning coexist, they interfere with each other. Therefore, when you say, "If you want me to, I will," please add, "and if you don't want me to, I won't." This is the right use of inhibition. There has to be some control over learning for channelizing purposes. Sometimes the new learning is the more important and has to inhibit the old. It is a form of correction. Everything that results in lack of love, which you used to call sin, is the result of inferior learning, which, if overlearned, becomes very stable. Miracles are a way of undoing overlearned patterns of love lack. They bring light into darkness. That is where their atonement value lies. Miracles depend on timing. This is why you shouldn't waste time. I told you before that time would cease when it was no longer useful as a learning aid. There is a way of speeding you up, and that is by leaving more and more time for me, so you can devote it to miracles. The reason I direct everything that is unimportant is because it is no way to waste your free will. If you insist on doing the trivial your way, you waste too much time and will on it. Will cannot be free if it is tied up in trivia. It never gets out. I will tell you exactly what to do in connection with everything that does not matter. That is not an area where choice should be invested. There is a better use of time. You have to remember to ask me to take charge of all minutiae, and they will be taken care of so well and so quickly that you cannot get bogged down in them. The only remaining problem is that you will be unwilling to ask, because you are afraid not to be bogged down. Do not let this hold us back. If you will ask, I will arrange these things, even if you're not too enthusiastic. I'm not intruding on your will, but I am trying to free it. Prayer can be very specific in little matters. If you need a coat, for example, ask me where to find one. I know your taste well, and I also know where the coat is that you would eventually buy anyway. If you do not like the coat afterwards, that is what would have happened anyway. I cannot save you more time than you will let me, but if you are willing to try the higher shopping service, which also covers all lower-order necessities, and even quite a number of whims within reason, I have very good use for the time we could save. Remember, the specific answers you get depends on the specific question you ask. The fewer limits you impose, the better the answer you will get. For example, you could ask, where can I find a particular brand of coat? Or, where is the coat I want? Or, where is the coat I should get? And so on. The form of the thought determines the level of the answer. Do not get bogged down in distractions if they now arise. They are reflections of old learning patterns and arise because you do not like what I have said about leaving minutiae to me. They merely illustrate your unwillingness to not get bogged down because you are afraid of the course. So don't use them that way. This course is about willingness, not unwillingness. Unwillingness has to be replaced by willingness because willingness is part of readiness, without which learning cannot occur.